Why I don't want Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Trump and the MAGA campaign to MAHA, make America healthy again. Why I don't want America to become healthy through way of government. And this may come as a surprise for some folks, especially since I am a health coach and I do care about clean food, nutritious food. It is certainly one of my greatest passions and interests. Why would I say such a thing? Why would I say that I don't want this country to become healthier? Well, I do want it to become healthier. The problem is how we go about in doing that. And I'm afraid a lot of people, including mostly medical professionals out there, are not seeing the psychology of what's going on regarding the individuals whom believe that somebody, Kennedy, can change this system and help make America healthy again. Now, I'm not saying there's all these different barriers to entry and all these problems within government that are perpetrating the problem and is not going to make us healthy. I'm saying from a multi-layered perspective, and you need to be able to look at the nuances. I'm going to be sharing them with you here. It's simply not going to work out no matter what you do, no matter who you put in office to make America healthy again. Now, again, this is a message I'm afraid a lot of people may not like. But if you are open-minded and maybe, you say you're into health and you want to get to the root cause, then this video is for you. Because I'm trying to find what is the root cause and what is going to be that shift that's going to occur to lead to sustainable health in the long run for the entire nation and for ultimately the entire world. Okay, because the whole world is affected by certain things. It's not just one country or another. Now, we may say America is unhealthy compared to these other countries, right? But let us bear in mind here, health is something that the whole world struggles with and is grappling with all the time. And we're always trying to achieve optimal health, and that is a continual process. It is not one where we say, okay, I'm healthy, boom, Well, you can say you're generally healthy if you have a strong immune system, if you're not overweight, right? There's certain criteria we may say for someone considered healthy. We may say that's the aim for America. I think most people know what I mean by healthy, so I'm not going to explain that in this video. It's more so, again, how we get to that point, which means most people in America, which is why we're talking about MAHA and MAGA specifically, and Kennedy, most people in America losing weight, getting healthy, getting off the drugs, getting off of the fast food, or the fast food even changing to healthier products, etc. Right? So general baseline, I think most people know what I'm talking about when I say the word healthy and MAHA. So hopefully I don't have to explain that. But in case you're curious, you can look at Kennedy. He even did some videos himself talking about this. And by the way, I have to give credit where it is due. There's good sides to this and there's bad sides to this. So let's talk about all of this, okay? I'm just going to throw out the first main premises of this video. When you have an authority and an order follower, and you have legality and you have standards, you're never truly going to have true health in this world. Okay, because as long as some people are willing to suppress their conscience and simply do what they are told, they're not doing it because it is right to do or because it's healthy to do. They're doing it simply because an authority says so. And they perceive this authority in a human being, which therefore gives them more rights than every other human being to do things which other human beings can do, which is why we have these positions in government, and they are presumed to do certain roles and certain functions. Many people liken this to an organization or a business, but it's very different than that, because this authority, through the use of government, will use violence to enforce its procedures, meaning whatever laws passed, it must be mandated, it must be pushed upon the population, whether they like it or not. So all the corporations must comply. Now, many people will say, whoa, yeah, that sounds good. A corporation complying with maybe, taking out the vegetable oils and putting tallow instead, into into their food fryers. Like, this is just an example of something Kennedy has mentioned. Now, first of all, some people will disagree with that because they say, vegetable oils can be good, or, maybe it gets a bad rep because it's processed and it's GMO. And there's a lot of nuances within that. But I think a lot of people can agree and say, yeah, tallow, this is the way to go. This is how McDonald's used to fry their fries. But again, here's a problem. There's one person achieving a position of authority and a bunch of order followers doing what they are told to basically allow that law to go into effect. Okay, and this creates a standard, this creates a legality, and what can happen is if there's different innovations and even better products, some of that innovation could be stifled. The competition can also be stifled, and corporations are being told what to do. Now, I find it interesting because the same people who want government to fix health also many times say that government is too tyrannical and that there's too many laws, there's too many things that control us. Well, it's very interesting here because when you want the government to be in charge of your health and to say what is healthy and what is not, you're exactly doing the same thing that you don't want them to do, which is have further control over your own life. People should be healthy without the government assistance. I would hope you agree, just as they should be economically prosperous without government assistance or what have you, right? So the question is, well, how do you eliminate government out of the picture? And then how do you use government to get to the point where government is out of the picture? Because the more control they have over everything, people will say that's good for the things that they want, but other people disagree. Is violence justified against those people who disagree? Is there any case use scenario whatsoever for vegetable oils, and why do they exist? Maybe it's because there is some cost reduction in production, and yeah, maybe there's a total disregard of health. But what happens when people start lobbying these different companies? They vote with their dollars, they sign petitions, and they get together with a bunch of people. That is very different from passing a law or putting somebody in a position of authority. Right? A good example of this is Food Babe, right? She has petitions for Kraft Foods and other companies to say, hey, you got to change this ingredient, you got to change this in your food. And people are making videos all over the internet exposing what to eat and what not to eat. So people are voting with their dollars, which is very different from then voting directly for government. In fact, many people have been voting with their dollars because the government has not been suitable for their interests, not looking at their health, not looking at the food. So interesting. Do we say that we should not vote with our dollars here and instead rely on the government to fix the problem so we don't have to vote with our dollars? Because it seems like that is the presumption that people want to make here. They want to have an authority in health. They want to have somebody who says this is what's healthy and this is what's not. But doesn't that take away then the individual care for an individual, which is that everybody is different, reacts to different foods, and that people need to find out what works best for them? Now, I know if you're pushing a certain diet or a certain agenda, then that certainly that individualized approach would not apply. But we have to acknowledge that not everybody has the same interests, the same foods, the same movie likes, the same color likes, and this difference makes us beautiful, right? So there is beauty in difference, and then there's some things where it's like, yeah, there are, this is a human body, we still have to apply our biology and still work with it directly. So you see how there's a lot to navigate through, but politics puts a general label and says this is what has to be done. And it's not that that's an issue within itself, although it can be in many cases. It's that, again, this belief in authority is not looked at. The order follower and their mindset is not looked at. Because does true healing come from creating an authority in man and being dependent on a system of government for your own health? No, true health comes from freedom, actually, and taking charge of your own health and encouraging people to have that within their own life. That gives them control over everything. That is true healing, true investment into their health. They're not just doing it, because you have to wonder how we get to where we are, right? Well, people didn't know the food was changing. People didn't know that the corporations were getting sneaky. People didn't know that all this stuff was happening to our food supply. That happened due to a prolonged ignorance. That ignorance happens when people are comfortable and they trust an authority or trust a corporation, and they trust these people they put in power in the products that they're consuming without questioning, without investigating for themselves. And when they do investigate for themselves and look into it deeper, they find out, wait, now I'm in control of my health. I know more about health than my own doctor. And then the politicians who claim to know about health, even though they're not doctors, right? So it's interesting because, again, now going back to the justifications people make, well, the FDA exists. It doesn't function the way it should. Well, we can say that for many things in the system. I mean, not just the FDA. It's all throughout the entire government. And if we cannot acknowledge that, then we're failing to see this deeper problem that I'm acknowledging, which is the authority itself. Not what the authority is doing with that position, but the authority itself. Which means that all these different systems within the government are bound to grow and bound to become tyrannical and bound to not function as intended, because it's the nature of the system by which we're giving certain people more rights than others, creating an authority in man, and expecting people to simply comply and do what they're told. Okay, it's a very different system, like I said, than a business or an organization. And these people are funded on taxation, which is money being taken from people, whether they like it or not, by the threat of violence. So the whole system of government is based on violence, and yet we want to use violence to heal ourselves. As if death is not the whole reason why we have a healthcare system, or the whole reason why we would want health in the first place. Right, is not to do violence to ourselves and to our bodies and to nature. And so no matter what system you have, if you put somebody in office and you change the laws, it's only going to be temporary change at best, because people themselves are not responsible for their own life and their own health, which is where true healing, true freedom, true everything that people want in their lives takes place. And you have to ask then, why then are other countries failing too? See, we say, oh, America's so bad, but, that's because we compare ourselves to other countries. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily the best and that we have to be like them just because they are a lesser evil and we are a greater evil. Are we playing the games of greater or lesser evil? Oh, wait, that's the same exact justification people give in politics. I'm picking one side over the other because one side is more evil than the other, which is less evil, and I'm just picking the lesser of two evils, right? And we say government's a necessary evil. Why do we call it evil? Would we say a nutrient or a certain plant, a medicine, is an evil that is necessary? We wouldn't call it that. It's either the medicine or it's not, right? And there might be some things within it that we have to live with, like the fact I can say that people naturally are bad and people naturally, have different interests, and there isn't a level of acceptance with the dangers that exist naturally within nature. Like there's oxalates and anti-nutrients, and there's different ways to process everything on this earth, and we can transform anything into anything. This just gives more reason to why we should not have one system imposed on everybody. Right? Again, when you have this system of dependence and collectivism and saying this is the one answer, like we say this is one cure for cancer we're looking for, when there's cures throughout all of nature and throughout the natural world, what we are doing is removing responsibility and autonomy and the freedom and decentralization and open-mindedness from the individual. Right? And so it's no surprise other countries are failing too. You look at China, you look at these different countries, you may say, man, they're healthier than America. Their stats are not getting better, they're also getting worse. And let's not forget that a lot of people who talk about diet or certain parts of health won't talk about other parts of health, just as some people in health won't talk about freedom or psychology, when I'm trying to bring these ideas together, because health, by definition, literally means whole. And if you're not looking at the big picture and bringing it together, I'm afraid you're not diagnosing or specifically addressing the problem at hand here. And so I want to get to the root cause, and that I believe firmly is this belief system and authority. That's what creates the government. That's what is government. And the order follower is the person who believes in that authority. And if it wasn't for the millions of people who followed Stalin or Hitler or Mao in World War II, this one person with their one crazy idea, none of the disease, none of the problems would have happened. You want to know the number one cause of death? It's democide, death by government. How many people in the medical establishment know about that, right? So you want to heal people, you want to prevent disease. Why not look at the top cause of unnatural death? I mean, my goodness. So you have to see that health comes down to a personal responsibility. And one person can't change the masses. I don't want Kennedy to make America healthy again. I want everybody to make America healthy again. I want the world to become healthy again. Let's not limit it to just this country, make a slogan out of it, and use that as an agenda to then take people's money against their will and then impose our views on them through what we call government. Let's instead recognize we are all equal. We all have self-ownership, so let's encourage that. Kennedy can show by example, educate others, get together with the different industries and businesses and show them what they can do through education rather than using law, which imposes and says, this is what you have to do because we say so. And because of this select science that we have over here, even though this science over here may conflict with it, and we're not looking at the future and what might change, because the laws we have now, are going to come in conflict with the technology that is being developed. I mean, think about this. Look up bio-nano things. We can put robots inside of people and see what is happening within their body, what drugs they should take at what time. It tracks them. It could even take control of different functions. This is the level we're getting at in medicine and in the world, and in the military they want to use it for as well. So if we're not considering where these fields are going, it can be really difficult. So we say, we got to take all this into account and make the perfect law. Well, that's the problem. We're not perfect as human beings. We have to accept the fact we're not perfect. And what is perfect? Well, you may say it's nature, it's God, it's truth. Well, what is the true healer in this life? Right? The naturopathic oath, the Hippocratic oath all say that you have to work with nature, work with the body, and work with the patient. You have to ask them questions, encourage the self-healing process, because the body heals itself. It's got the blueprint to do so, right? It's got lungs that automatically breathe, hearts that automatically pumps. This is a beautiful, intelligent system that we're not necessarily tapping into if we say it should be replaced by automation, which is, again, doing what you're told and doing what you're programmed to do. Oh, well, this is the standard. This is what the government says is healthy. Oh, this is what is illegal. Oh, well, this is what the government said. Oh, this is what Kennedy said. This is what Trump said. This is what his law said. Well, what about the truth? What about God? What about what is right? What about what is healthy for the individual? This just goes out the window? No. Right? So, and again, if your goal then is to undo what the government has done, then the best thing you can do is not accept that position of authority and encourage those who are also taking those positions, like the order followers, to also step down and simply say no, because when they say no, everything falls down by itself. Instead of you having to go through all these different loopholes of, well, we got to pass this law to get rid of this law, or, create this new drug to get rid of this old drug, make a new drug because of the problems this drug created, the symptom management, right? And it's not getting down to the root cause. The root cause is a matter of people saying no where it is due. I am not going to serve this government. I am not going to pay taxes if it's based on violence, because I don't want to promote violence. I don't want to promote the wars. I want to give my money directly where I want it to go, voluntarily. I want to create a voluntary world. And by doing so, have people make their own choices, because that is health. That is responsibility, right? Very, very different position, again, from these governments. Now, there's more to this, okay? It's not just this. corporations will find workarounds no matter what you do. In 2008, during Obama's presidency, trans fats were banned. Oh my gosh, what an amazing thing, right? Trans fats, this cause of heart disease. So what we got to do is, get rid of all these hydrogenated oils in our products. Well, guess what? The corporations found sneaky ways using partially hydrogenated oils. And hey, this is good for content creators to play the political game once in a while, to also maybe get a new job, but also to get more followers, but also because they have more content when there's new ingredients being developed endlessly. Partially hydrogenated oils were introduced by the corporations where they would have in the decimals trans fats, where you would eat several servings, it would count up several numbers, like 1 or 2 or 3 grams of trans fat, but you would see 0 grams of trans fat on the label because they wouldn't show you the decimals. So there still was trans fat. It was hidden. Look at MSG. All the different forms. There's like 500 different forms of MSG, hidden forms even in natural flavors. And there's whole forums dedicated to all the problems with it because people have to pinpoint where it is. It's like autolyzed yeast extract and soy protein isolate and all sorts of things that people are like, wait, what? It's because of the natural glutamates and the MSG. Sometimes it's directly in the product. Other times it's like something you got to look really deep into. And then there's other forms like sodium nitrate, which kind of acts like MSG, but it's not. And so, let's add celery powder instead. It's like a natural form of nitrates. People are like investigating this. This is not political. This is people like doing their research, telling others about it, and it spreads like wildfire. I have seen within the past 10 years so much change from corporations and their products, and simply from the internet and people worried about it and people making calls and petitions. And that right there is beautiful. So the system is changing, but in order to really change our health, we need personal responsibility. We need an awakening, a conscious shift. Okay, that's what's really going to do it, because no matter what's healthy out there, most people know what's healthy. Most people know what's bad, but they still choose the bad, even though they know what's healthy. So people's choices are there. And at the same time, the corporations find ways to continue doing bad. And so no matter what you do, there's going to be workarounds. Same thing with GMOs, by the way. GMOs, sneaky. You got to find out all the hidden forms in all the food. Sugar, sneaky. You got to find out all the hidden forms. And then now heavy metals, that's not tested for, right? Who's looking at heavy metals? And then let's look at all the hidden forever chemicals. And it's like you just go on and on and on and on. At a certain point, one must develop community resilience. Get together, buy local, grow food, pay attention to their food supply. And it sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of hard work. Well, we can create the systems that does that, because there's churches, there's prisons, there's schools, and they don't know the knowledge necessary to do that. And they think it's hard. And it can be something profitable. It can be something that changes a lot. They don't know about permaculture. People are still stuck on agriculture and gardening, right? So there's ideas out there, there's education to be had. But again, the politician comes in and says, I have the solution for you. Everybody's got to do this. And even if it's permaculture, even if it's this or that, there's probably something even better than that. We need to let people compete and have the innovation and the accountability and the showing by example, because the minute you say, I got the answers, you got to follow me, you got to be dependent. Everybody says, wow, this person is great. They fix the health. Now I should be more obedient, so now I could be more comfortable and not pay attention to what's going on because I trust this person in charge of my own health, right? Like the doctor who helps you. Oh my gosh, this doctor's great. I'm just going to have him tell me everything of what to do for my health. Okay, well, now you might end up with some problems you don't recognize because you're not paying attention to your own health and you don't truly understand what's going on. He might just be giving you a temporary fix you don't even know, right? So, and also, it's not a wide-scale effort, and the minute that person dies, you're left helpless, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And the minute the government loses funding, the minute these different systems start to have some conflicts, everything starts to fall apart because everybody's dependent on it for their food stamps and for what have you, right? So I can go on. I don't want to make this video too long, but I hope you're getting at what I'm saying. So many influencers say, vote with your dollars. It's still the best strategy because it's the only strategy. If you want anything in this life to be out there, you have to show people, you have to educate them. And if it's a bad idea, people won't follow it. If it's a good idea, people will follow it. It's just that simple. And, why do you need violence for your idea to be imposed if it's such a good idea? People should be willing to get on board, unless, of course, there's censorship and things getting involved where it's preventing the information from getting out. But then people start creating awareness around that, and then things start to shift more, right? Like now you have people like Elon buying Twitter and trying to remove censorship, and a bunch of content creators complaining about it, and then they create their own platforms. It's a beautiful thing when you have the competition. You know what squanders that competition? When certain people are giving tax exemptions, when there's certain regulations preventing certain medicines from coming overseas, and all these tariffs and healthcare and all this stuff being thrown on people. Now it's not real freedom. People are not choosing what they want to consume within their own life. It's not consensual. It's not voluntary. We say, we should have consensual relationships because it's good for relationships. Well, what about your relationship with the government? I mean, as it is, people are addicted to politics. Nonetheless, there's a mass trauma that happens from democide, and that can last generations of time. We're not looking at psychology because it's too easy to talk about nutrition or the external things and what's in our food, not necessarily going inside ourselves and going inside the populace. It's much easier to point the finger and say, this person has to change the world for me, right? All right, so let's talk about another thing, right? Funny enough, Dr. Berg, who's somebody who a lot of people say, he's a big YouTuber. He's got a lot of great information online. I want him to be a part of the government, right? And be a part of the decision making. People don't know he's involved with Scientology, right? Which many people may call a cult, right? And why do people not know this? Because it's a cult, just like the very system of government. And as long as you have that government, you're going to have corporations money lobby to get what they want done, because they have money. Money speaks. They can just buy out the politicians and buy out what they want, right? So education doesn't really matter in the face of government, because as long as that authority in man exists and that violence persists, education goes out the window. What's the point? Everybody's got to fight over the sword, fight over who has the most might to make right, all right? So that is what we've been doing for thousands of years, which is why a lot of my work focuses on slavery, because this is the nature of the system since its foundations in Sumeria in ancient times. We are merely perpetuating a trauma many, many generations over and over, which is why I have this very detailed, seminar, Health Revealed, with Leslie Powers, Scott Gordon, and Stephanie Mo Davis, who are, I would consider medical whistleblowers who care deeply about the world and our healthcare system and politics and all of the institutions, right? We criticize all of it, and we look at the good, we look at the bad and the differences, because there is always something to say, this isn't right, even for corporations. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying that, without the government, there isn't going to be problems. But in order to have a world where people are truly free, where people are living voluntarily, people have to apply that rule within their lives. So take, for instance, because you may think this is utopian and never can happen, the abolitionist and slavery I use as a good example in history, right? You had to convince the world after thousands of years slavery is wrong, right? And many people say, well, without slavery, who will pick the cotton? And, without slavery, the economy will collapse and the slaves will run amok and there'll be chaos, right? And so there will be all these news stories and they're attacking the abolitionists and saying they're causing fires and they're super chaotic, even though the abolitionists are like Christian pacifists. And that's who inspired Leo Tolstoy, by the way, and many others throughout history, who, we would consider like prolific writers like J.R. Tolkien, right, who, also called himself an anarchist, but in a very radically different sense. What I mean by that is voluntarist, more specifically. That is to recognize that no one man can be entrusted with power, and that power corrupts. It even changes your brain structure according to different studies. So, there's more and more it can delve into, but this medical project we have just goes into it, right? And it also shares the slavery perspective. But if you want, I wrote books on this. I dedicated time to this because not even historians have picked up on it. Of course, not even mainstream psychologists have talked about it. Like, what about permaculture and growing food? What about that for a change of health? I mean, the average farm to table, it's like 1,500 miles. Like, what's going on here? The food security during COVID, 98%. I mean, people are buying toilet paper to prepare. I mean, people don't know a thing about growing food. They're not taught that in school. The school models based on the Prussian model of schooling, like, you have to, if you change one system, you got to change the whole thing. And then at that point, you're like, my goodness, we need a revolution. But no, see, we don't need a revolution. We need an awakening, right? So what we need to understand at the end of the day, which, by the way, look at all these co-authors, great people, incredible stuff. And, I have videos talking more about the psychology, by the way, if you're interested, from so many different angles, even going into bullying and, like I said, the addiction and the trauma and the relationships. I mean, I've got all this information. So if you're curious, ask me a question. Feel free to reach out. I'm always open to the conversation. If you want to talk to the medical team about this and get deep into the medicine side of it, let us know. But the main point here is that sovereignty is a precursor to health. And without freedom, you will never have health. So the good is that the companies have changed a lot, right? And it's up to us to continue that progression. But we need to go further than that. We need to hit the mind. Because the mind, when that's healed, the body comes as a result. Mental slavery is the root to physical slavery, right? So when you free your mind and you are personally responsible and you have an awakened populace who wants to be healthy, who is inspired to become healthy because it's in their community, it's a part of life, that radically changes the whole structure, which is why permaculture and growing food, not lawns, can be a powerful message, and why Jim Gale is doing a lot of outreach with me, creating councils, working with the biggest prison universities in the world. He's demonstrating the solution, invites world leaders to come and his 50 acres in Florida. If you're interested, please, reach out to us and we'll let you know. We'll sit down with you. I'll literally put a picture on the screen of Jim Gale, who, again, I wrote the book with, sitting down with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about this, right? But yet we haven't heard a single word from him regarding permaculture and growing food and not lawns. Now, maybe he does say something. Again, is it the government's responsibility, or can he simply say, I'm a human being, I'm not taking this position of authority, don't respect me as such, I am simply here to show you these different forms of growing food, what we can do, the prison, schools, the churches, what we can do if we come together and grow food instead of lawns on this land and create a domino effect throughout the nation. Just that alone would be gigantic. Not everybody has to grow food, right? But just that alone would be great, because then people would take cuttings home, and then naturally people will start growing food in their backyard. And then sooner or later you have abundance. Abundance defeats scarcity. Scarcity, a leading cause of war, right? I mean, you can break it down. You got the economic, the medical, the physical, the mental, the masculine, the feminine. All of this comes into harmony when you recognize the autonomy, the sovereignty of the individual, and you encourage that decentralization through the education and the empowerment. With every increase of education and knowledge throughout history, has there been enlightenment? Has there been a shift in the culture and the social fabric of society where people say, I'm done with the old, I'm here with the new? Like Buckminster Fuller said, to create, something new, you got to show something that is new. You can't work on the old and try to fix the old. You have to just create something entirely new, saying this is the future, right? Let's put it right into our hands. And so, again, officials, if you're listening, Kennedy, if you're listening, I care about you, your message, and I thank you for the education you have done. Continue to educate. Don't take a position of authority. Nobody who's out there, an influencer, if you're listening to this, do not promote government authority in man. Do not. If you claim you serve nature, truth, God, or the body, do not put an authority in man, because where does that right come from? Read The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. This is why Mark Passio calls it the one true divide, why Jeremy Locke calls it the end of all evil. Leo Tolstoy says, for a peaceful revolution, all we have to do is just have a bunch of people step down from their position, or one town simply stop paying taxes, as Henry David Thoreau said, the one who coined civil disobedience. We have evidence that civil disobedience is the most effective strategy in history. So boom, 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 I just gave it to you. A bunch of solutions, a bunch of perspectives. Nobody's talking about this, right? So this is real leadership. It is not authority. And understand there's a difference there between somebody who wants the authority, somebody who accepts that authority, puts on that crown, that uniform, can do violence to others that other people can't do, versus that person who says, hey, I'm just like you. I'm no more special. I didn't get here through some ritual process. I'm just here trying to help people out, And I don't see credit for it because, frankly, if it's so great, you've done it yourself. Like the Tao Te Ching talks about, the second most translated work in the world after the Christian Bible. If there's a true government on this earth, it's that the people don't recognize it's even there to begin with. And that the leader's the one who's behind. Because the people heal themselves. They free themselves. And that is where true freedom comes, which is why the slaves had to be taught how to read and write. Because without which, they would just fall back into slavery. And many of them did. Many of them did not know freedom. They feared freedom, did not know how to read and write, so that way they could be kept away from freedom. Well, we have to empower people and believe in their potential just as much as we would say it's important to have faith or God on your side to heal, because it's a requirement, right? To have that sense of inspiration, to have that energy and momentum that pushes us and propels us forward. Without which, this is the whole idea of utopia. It's like Oscar Wilde called it the realization of progress. And again, he was also an anarchist in a totally different sense. Dude was like a modern Shakespeare, right? Let's radically rethink the way we're doing things. And let's not take offense to these words. I say anarchy, right? And I say these words that come across really bad when in Greek they mean no rulers, not no rules. And, you can say the same thing for democracy, communism, all these different things, republic. These all have been twisted in different ways because, again, humans, we're not perfect. And we may think that we've got things figured out, but every time we do, we end up not being so right, do we? We have to have an open mind and approach this world where we allow people to have freedom and act on that freedom for themselves. Without which, nothing is human. Nothing is humane in this world. Everything will be ran by AI. Technocracy will take over this world. If people do not listen to this warning that I have for anybody who follows anyone in politics for any measure whatsoever. Watch The Jones Plantation. It's a movie done by Larkin Rose based on his book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, where he breaks it down how slavery back from the 1800s can be literally transcribed into the modern day with simply changing the language and euphemisms. Sounds controversial, doesn't it? But it's only controversial to the mind who doesn't want to hear it. Right? As Benjamin Rush, right, the father of psychiatry, said, controversy is dreaded by the advocates of error. Same founding father who wrote a text about how we need to indoctrinate our kids in the education system to be trained that authority and that government authority is above that of their own parents and above that of anything, because that's what matters at the end of the day, is that they are obedient to authority, right? That's the father of psychiatry in America. So thank you very much for watching. This is Corey Engerlot. Nature is the answer. Be sure to go to nita.one for more information on permaculture and the solution from, an economic point of view. Very huge. Voluntarism, and the psychology end of it, the medical end of it. Go to healthrevealed.org, healthrevealed.org. Right? Of course, the abolitionism, slavery part of it, theliberator.us. We have perspectives on nearly everything at this point, so if you're open to the information, well, I welcome you. Thank you very much for watching.